guys have the better situation.
Okay. So you can start at 5:30 exactly, Kate. And like always, we you start with all the presentations, and then at the end, everyone will post their questions on the chat box you could answer.
Sure. Would you like me to just do our standard JD, or do you want me to just go through LLM and advanced standing?
Yeah, all the programs which is offered at the master's at the graduate level.
All right. Well, just give me 1 minute. I'm going to turn my video off and I'm going to get my presentations open.
Okay.
Okay. So I think the most appropriate one that I can show you, because of course all of these programs are separate. Typically, we introduce programs independently of each other. I'm going to show you the LLM because that's the primary market for India. I can talk a little bit about the advanced standing JD and answer questions about a traditional JD. It's much less common that we would find people who are interested in coming for 3 years for a JD program because the JD isn't a degree that's widely adopted in India. However, I can definitely go through any of that as well. Um,
Okay.
I think I'm going to ad hoc with the slides because some of it might just be overkill, but I can certainly get into the type of credentials that we're looking for, the type of students we typically see, the evaluation process, and answer any questions you have. I know this stuff inside and out. So I'm going to get that up. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll get into it.
Sure.
Okay. Share it, and then I'll make it full size. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see? We're in good shape. It's real late for me, so bear in mind. Okay, so LLM is our primary degree that we um, market to Indian students because it's directly compatible with the first degree in law in India. Um, so we'll get into that and I'll go into the details of what we would be looking for. Let's see, I'm going to go backwards. Okay, so I'm sure you have some basic familiarity with the university at large, but something really important to note is we are the only law school in the SUNY system. The SUNY system is very comprehensive, but we are the only law school, and we were established 138 years ago. So we do have a body. So those are a couple of things to consider when you're talking about this program to potential students. Pathways to practice in New York State. I did speak to this a little bit, but we have 3-degree pathways for potential international students. The standard pathway that most associate with practicing law in the United States is the JD, or the Juris Doctorate program. This is a 3-year program. It does require a standardized test to be admitted to it, but otherwise it only requires a bachelor's degree. Whereas the other two are specifically for practicing attorneys with first degrees in law. So that would be our LLB students. So our advanced standing JD is built off of the JD curricula, but it is shortened into a 2-year program. So students come in with the traditional JD cohort and they study all of the bar classes in the first year. That's a prescribed curriculum. So they don't get to choose any of their classes in that first year. The year beyond that, they get to customize their schedule with electives and experiential learning credits, and then they graduate after that second year. But what we're going to talk about predominantly are our LLM programs today, and LLMs are also a pathway for foreign trained attorneys to sit for the New York State Bar. New York Bar eligibility. This is one of the biggest questions that we get because essentially the perk of having an LLM from the University of Buffalo is that you can obtain bar eligibility in New York State and find pathways to practice and potentially be sponsored to stay and practice. So we're going to be looking for a first degree in law from an undergraduate institution. In India, this is the LLB degree. And we're also going to be looking for 24 credits of in-person study with the following courses. Intro to U.S. Legal Studies, Intro to U.S. Legal Systems, 2 bar subjects equaling 6 credits. And then we're going to be looking for 3 credits of experiential learning. So that's what the program would be comprised of. There's also space for particular electives based on the desired outcomes or areas of practice for the individual. All of the students are paired with an advisor, which we'll talk about as well, who will help them choose the appropriate classes. So they don't have to know this off the top of their head. They have one-to-one advising with the program director, who will also help them fill out any paperwork. Sorry, the name applies, but you can choose from a broad range. We have a cross-border legal studies LLM program. This is geared more towards people who are hoping to practice international law. This works closely with Canada since we are so close regionally to Canada, studying policy and trade programs. And finally, we have a criminal law LLM. This one actually does gain a lot of traction with Indian students who hope to come back and work in the court system in India. So we have a lot of inquiries regarding that one specifically. This is geared towards American criminal law, which is a little bit different. However, it is often beneficial to have an understanding for comparing and contrasting different legal systems and offering perspectives into each respective place. So I talked about these. I'm going to kind of just move through them because I already went through them, and also just for brevity and the chance to ask questions. Okay, so the benefits of an LLM. This is pretty important when we're thinking about how are we going to speak to students, especially now, about coming to the States for a 1-year program. I guess I'm just ad hocing this one because I didn't write any text. So there are tangible and intangible benefits to having an LLM. First and foremost, it's a global dialogue. coming from a different legal system to the United States, bringing that perspective, participating in these conversations, is valuable in and of itself. Uh, our LLM students are integrated directly with the JD students. There are only a few separate classes, so you're part of the entire legal community at the law school. The other thing is that an LLM is an international degree. So whether your goal is to practice in New York State, go into some sort of law locally, or bring it back to your home country, it still is a master's degree in law. Um, Visiting India this past fall, what I heard frequently from graduates of American programs was that they felt that the physical experience of being on the ground in a new place, having to adapt, having to adjust to the classroom styles, and then creating those relationships and those networks in the United States was also a benefit in and of itself. So there are lots of benefits. It just depends on the perspective, because some of the benefits are obvious, right? Access to practice, a degree from an accredited long-standing institution, the connections in the local area, but then some are much more abstract. So the University of Buffalo has a ton of support services that are built in to the law school experience. So we'll touch on these pretty quickly. Um, First and foremost, all of our foreign trained attorneys, so anyone from an LLB background would be in an extended orientation program that we call Jumpstart. This is specifically designed for foreign trained attorneys to expose them to the fundamentals of the US legal system. So it's a 3-week program. It typically starts at the end of July. So something to think about when we're thinking timelines and visas is that we expect students on campus by the end of July to start Jumpstart. This is a really good opportunity to have direct one-on-one with some of our faculty. It's also a small cohort, so they start to know their counterparts immediately in the LLM program. We also have one-to-one advising, which I mentioned before. All of our LLM students work closely with the program director. This is a pretty rare thing across most US institutions that they would have one-to-one advising with the program director, who are our faculty vice deans for international education. So that's a pretty big deal. And they help them customize their educational path and pursue the elective coursework for their individual goals. We also have an Office of Student Affairs. Office of Student Affairs is the essentially one-stop shop for all of our students across the law school. They assist with advising, they offer engagement, networking, community-oriented programming. So all of our advocacy comes from Office of Student Affairs. There's an in-house counselor, faculty advisement, all of our accommodations, and our student organizations, which are a huge part of the law school experience, participating in those clubs on campus, specifically for law students to be engaged. So Office of Student Affairs handles all of that. We also have a career service office. This is a big deal because career service is for life. All of the students engaged with one-to-one counseling from a career service advisor. So when they're asking, how do I get a job? What do I do? Who do I talk to? Career service is the spot. I don't even want to say that they're available. It's more than they're available. It's built into their curriculum. So they handle individual career counseling, student interview programs. So they bring employers to campus to participate in campus interviews to find positions post-graduation. They run an entire online job matrix, so students can browse through the job situation and apply directly through that CSM. They have a mentor program from the community that matches with the individual students. The mentor is typically somebody that's working in law in the area. They have career panels and programs, the Public Defender's Job Fair, and our annual career fair. Our annual career fair is one of the only of its kind because typically employers don't come to the students have to go to the employers. We bring over 300 employers to the school for the career fair and they get to interface with them directly. So our career service offices is doing quite well. Of course, international students always have the extra burden of finding sponsorship if they're here on a student visa. So we are very aware that that's something that they would have to navigate, but we do have experience with finding sponsored opportunities for our students. Rally the Pass is an important initiative that we've taken on since 2023. I won't go too into detail about this, but it's basically a preparation program for the bar that's built in. There's no additional cost associated with this. And it is study space, individual lectures, workshops, food. Uh, Everything is covered so that you can just focus and study for the bar exam. Across the entire law school, our bar pass rates are very high. They're about 87%. So we have excellent success in preparing students to take the New York State Bar. Application process, this is probably where you guys are really going to want to dig in because application for law school looks a little bit differently than it would look for, say, engineering because we are on a national application. So all of our applications are going to go through the lsac.org platform. In some ways, this is wonderful because it's everything in one place, but in other ways, it can be annoying because that's the only option that they have. So LSAC handles all of the document aggregation. It handles all of the evaluation. So there's no WES or ACRO evaluation that's required. Everything goes directly through LSAC. So to be eligible, we're looking for a first degree in law and proof of English proficiency. This one's important. We don't waive ELP for our Indian candidates unless they've done a graduate level program or an undergraduate level program in the US, Canada, Australia, England, something like that. There are some other exceptions. So if you want to know the exceptions, I'd be happy to share that page with you, but it's a university-wide policy. So we don't have much say in what that looks like. We also are going to require students to subscribe to the LSAC Credential Assembly Service. This is our document aggregator through LSAC and the ITAES Evaluation Service. This is the in-house credential evaluation. It's very similar to a WES and it's provided through ACRO. It's just on the LSAC platform. We're going to be looking for all of the official transcripts to be sent directly by the undergraduate registrar to LSAC, as well as recommendation letters, 2 to 3, a personal statement, and a professional resume. Hopefully we got all of that out, even though it's a lot. So when we're talking about our admissions timeline, we're talking about basically the overview of our whole cycle. So our applications open on September 1st. We've just met our early decision deadline. So all of those applications are in and currently being read. When we do admit people early decision, typically international students don't pursue this option because it is binding. They receive their decision, admit or deny by December 15th. We do recommend that our international students have all of their applications in by March 1st, just so that they have time for visa processing should they decide that they want to come. And the final deadline for our tuition deposits for people admitted prior to this date is April 15th. The visa process, we can never be certain how long that's going to take. If all of those documents are ready and in good shape, a Form I-20 can be issued typically pretty quickly, and then they just have to wait on that visa interview, which I'm sure you guys all know very well. What are we looking at? You're going to hear this from all schools across the United States. This is a holistic review. So of course we're going to be looking at anything that's quantitative. If there's numbers such as a GPA, we're going to be taking that into consideration. We're going to be looking at the ELP scores, but we're also going to be looking at the writing. The personal statement tells us about you, but it also shows us how you write. We're going to be looking at any achievements that you might have on that resume or CV. And we're going to be looking at how your letters of recommendation speak to you, your sense of character, as well as your accomplishments. And it really is a holistic review. So we're going to be looking at all of the aspects. I think we do have an expectation of coming from an academically rigorous background with some level of success, but I think that there is a very considerate read given to each student. Okay, what does it cost to come for an LLM? Interestingly enough, the difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition is negligible. It's about $5,000. So that's pretty good. A foreign student would be looking at $35,000 before any scholarship. That's for the entire year. It also includes all of our fees. So 35,000 to 30 is our current tuition and fee rate for the year. Over 90% of our admitted students have a scholarship. It's pretty good. Scholarships are typically in the 30% range. Depending on the academic merits of the application, they could have up to 50%, and they can negotiate their scholarships. Realistically, they're not going to get 100%. That's just not common in the States. It's very uncommon. But they could be looking at a significant tuition discount rate in that 50% range if their application merits it. Housing, we have lots of professional housing options on campus if that's something that they would want to consider. We don't have to go through that. There also are many student type housings around the campus and private housing. So housing is generally not an issue just because we do welcome so many students to the university at large. Okay, now I'll open it up to you all for questions. I will say that the application process is the same regardless of whether you're applying for traditional JD or an LLM or an advanced standing. So those details are going to remain basically static. The only difference is that the traditional JD does not require a first degree in law. Okay. Thoughts, questions, comments, observations, anything? And I can take this down so I can see you. Let's see. Stop share. All right. We don't require any GRE or GMAT. The only test we're going to be looking for the foreign trained attorneys programs is ELP. So TOEFL, IELTS, we even take Duolingo. Minimum English. So for minimum English, IELTS, we're going to be looking for a 7.0. We're not looking at individual band sections, so that actually makes it easier. TOEFL, we're going to be looking for a minimum of 90. We don't take PTE in the law school. I know in the university at large we do. If we got one, we might be able to make an exception, but our faculty is not as familiar with it. Duolingo is a 120. Backlogs criteria. You might have to explain that one because I'm not sure what you mean by that
So
one.
it's the number of fails, Kate.
Oh, okay. So I understand what you're saying. Um, with the foreign credential evaluation, we don't see that. So it's funny, I did international admissions for a long time. I know all about multiple attempts. We don't see multiple attempts. We only see the consolidated transcript. So in some ways that works in their advantage because we don't know how many times they've sat for an exam. We're just going to be looking at that cumulative GPA, and what the foreign credential evaluation says that they have achieved. So I think that that in some ways really helps them. We are going to be looking for, students that have done fairly well in their LLB program, probably upwards of 7 out of 10. Um, yeah, like I said, backlogs, we're not going to be looking at that because it goes through the evaluation and they're not reporting how many times they've sat for those exams. Um, I-20 duration is 2 years, and then they get that optional year for OPT. The I-20 deposit is the tuition deposit. So once they pay their tuition deposit, they will be moved into the I-20 review phase. I'll quickly, very quickly go over what they need for their I-20. That does go through a separate office, but I know it inside and out. We're going to be looking for a signed financial form. That's basically our affidavit saying where the money is going to come from. We're going to be looking for proof of funds for 1 year of studies. So before scholarship, this is about $59,800. So they need to show that they have that, including their scholarship. They can use bank statements. They can use combined bank statements. They don't have to pay from these. They can use an educational loan and they can use a Providence fund, but a Providence fund is calculated at 75%. So if you're using your parents' retirement, you need to think about that. You can also use fixed deposits, but the fixed deposits have to mature by the time of enrollment. I know it's a lot to think about. What else is on here? And then the admissions letter, which we have and upload on your behalf. So I-20 processing is fairly straightforward. Program duration, I said, is 2 years. How many terms can a student defer his or her admission? Admission is only for fall semesters in the law school, just because of the nature of when the classes are offered and when the bar exam is offered. We don't limit the amount of times that a student can defer their admission, but after maybe 1 or 2, we're going to become a little suspicious because these are whole year periods that they would defer for. But our office is very hands-on with this process, and we're happy to help students who might run into any difficulty with that. Minimum GPA requirements. We don't have a minimum GPA requirement. That being said, a student is most likely to be offered admission if they have done fairly well in their program. And fairly well, like I said, would be, kind of above that 70% mark or a 7 out of 10. That's flexible. If they have a ton of experience and great letters of recommendation, that might be more flexible. But we're looking, for that above average student. They don't have to be a superstar, but definitely above average. Is an English language test waiver available for a medium of instruction? It's not. This is university policy, not a law school policy. I-20 deposit amount is our tuition deposit, which is $450. LSAT exam is not required and not encouraged. It's only required if a student wants to pursue a traditional JD program, which is, you probably will not encounter that. LLM programs have only a fall start. We do not have any spring intake. Is change of agent accepted? Okay, I don't know much about that, so I'm glad Abidai jumped in. How can we defer the application? To defer an application once it was accepted, that's really the only time you can defer an application. A student will have to pay that $450 deposit. And then we will defer the application in the next cycle. They won't have to reapply. They'll just be considered part of the next year's incoming class. And we'll reach out to whomever is the contact in that application to make sure that they plan to enroll in that following year. Does the university accept transfer cases? So you mean somebody that's already at another US institution? Um, we don't see this. It's very uncommon to see somebody transferring because we only accept in fall and it's a 1 year program. So they would have had to take a leave of absence and transfer um, mid program, right? Which jeopardizes their status. It would be very uncommon to see that. Um, if somebody wanted to, it would really depend on their grades and whether or not they could get back to the United States to do it. If their performance in another US institution, similar to ours, was not strong enough to continue in the program, it would be unlikely that we would offer them admission. If there were circumstances that led to them not being able to stay, then we might consider that as long as their grades were good. Does the university accept CPT? Yes, CPT is part of, this program. You can do your experiential learning. We try to build it in so that they don't have to do CPT because we don't want them to borrow from their OPT. So it's usually 4 credit experiential learning, which is good because we want them to have as much time in the job market as possible. Is the deposit refundable? It is not refundable. But it can be rolled forward in that case of a deferral. Is the I-20 enrollment deposit refunded in case of visa refusal? If the visa was refused, then we could talk about that. It comes to the discretion of the dean. But I think if it was a visa refusal, that's something that we would work with, or we would do an automatic deferral. It would be case by case depending on what was going on at the time. Is third-party credential evaluation required? The credential evaluation is built into the application process by LSAC. It's called the ITAES, and that's LSAC through ACRO. So they don't have to go and pursue any other additional third-party credential evaluation. The credential evaluation is going to be built into that application. Do we accept an Indian 3-year bachelor's degree? So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. For a JD degree, you need a bachelor's degree. They also need to go through that ITAS evaluation. It's not going to be up to us. If the evaluation comes back that it's not equivalent to a US bachelor's degree, they would be ineligible. For another program at the University of Buffalo, it would be different because it would be handled and reviewed by an in-person advisor, whereas ours is going through that ITAES. Chances are that the ITAES is going to be more strict than in-house policy, but we might be able to make an exception based on school policy if we have precedent for that. So that is it could be acceptable. We'd have to do an in-house policy review to see if they met our university policy. GRE, GMAT, not required. So the only test we're going to be looking for is English proficiency, or LSAT if they want a traditional 3-year JD. How will the student be notified? All of our admissions letters are sent by email. So they would be contacted directly with the email on file with their admission letter. It typically takes 4 to 5 weeks, depending on when their application is submitted, for them to hear their decision. Can you elaborate on the deferral process? Will it be done via the mail portal? Deferral is just all done by email. Our office is still very much a people-oriented office, so you would work with me directly if one of your students was admitted and wanted to defer, and you would just send me an email, or they would send me an email and say that they wanted to defer, and we would put that manually into their application. We don't have any English language program. Um, that is something that we used to offer, but we don't offer that anymore. And that was an institution level, not a law school level. Scholarships. So all students are considered for scholarships at the time of academic review. So if they are offered admission, they will be offered their scholarship in the exact same letter. Um, Typically, the scholarship that I see for international students is about 30%. So roughly 10,500. Um, it does vary, depending, like I said, on the merits of the application. If it's a very strong application, they could see more. I wouldn't expect to see more than $15,000, even for a very strong student. But even that is about 50% of the tuition. Um, Basically, our admissions committee is looking at all of the aspects of the application, to determine if they're admissible and also how much scholarship their application would be awarded. So typically we see that 30 to 50% range for our admitted students across all programs. The international admissions requirements are the same for all students for these programs. It doesn't matter if they're Vietnam, Nepal, Bangladesh, Dubai, or Philippines. The only caveat is that these countries have to have a first degree in law that makes them eligible to practice in their country, unless they want to pursue a JD, which just requires a bachelor's degree and the LSAT. JD is 3 years. Advanced standing JD is only for foreign trained attorneys, it's 2 years. And then LLM is 1 year, and again, only for foreign trained attorneys. Typically, I refer to India because they have an LLB, which is eligible for the advanced standing and the LLM. But Bangladesh is also following that model, so they're eligible. Um, we don't often see applicants from Vietnam. We do see applicants from Nepal that follow us a similar pathway. Um, Dubai and Philippines, we also don't see often, but if they have that first degree in law, they would be eligible for those programs. Are financial documents required to be submitting at the time of application? No, they are not. You would not have to submit financial documents until the student was deposited. So, um, yeah, they don't have to have that ready until they were offered admission, and ready to deposit to the program. Anything else? Okay, it looks like we got everything that we needed. We got it pretty quickly. Um, you're more than welcome to reach out to me specifically or to Abidai with questions regarding this. I understand that this was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. But I do manage all of the international applicants at the law school level, so I am the contact. So I'm kind of the one and only in the law school. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Can we do an LLM without an LSAT? Yes. We do not encourage our LLM applicants to take the LSAT because if they take it, then we have to look at it. The LSAT is a very, very challenging test. And often students who have not spent enough time preparing do not do well. So we don't encourage students to take it because it could hinder their admission to the LLM, and it's not a required test for foreign trained attorneys. The fact that you're an attorney in your home country is your eligibility. All right, I think that's it. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions at this time, I will wrap it up. I hope you all get to enjoy some sun. Maybe there's some sun and dinner. So thank you for meeting with me today, and please feel free to send any questions if you find them later.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.
Bye.